Good morning to all. Myself, Dr. Santosh Kumar Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of Soil Science. And today I am here to deliver a talk on the topic integrated nutrient management for integrated farming system So you are aware, you might be aware of the term, but just for revision, I will be uh, just for revision, I will just define these terms. So, integrated farming system. Integrated farming system is a system which comprises of interrelated set of enterprises with crop activity as base. Will will provide waste to recycle produce, and waste from one component becomes an input for another part of the system, which reduces cost and improves soil health and production as well as farm income. So this is the definition given by Paul Harris. So to elaborate it, integrated farming system, it comprises of all the activities which are related to agriculture. It includes crop husbandry, livestock production, poultry, duckery, horticulture, aquaculture, apiculture, sericulture, mushroom cultivation, agroforestry, and biogas plant. So these all are included under integrated farming system. This is a very vast topic, and I will confine myself to the integrated nutrient management in soil and plant system. So why there is the need for integrated nutrient management? You know that India accounts for 2.2% of the global land and 16% of the world population. The country crossed the 1 billion mark in 2001. The population is growing at a rapid rate, and to feed this population we have to increase the food grain production. We got the green revolution in 1970s. At that time, short duration variety short height varieties, photoinsensitive varieties, they were launched, and they were highly responsive to the fertilizer and fertilizer application. Initially, in those days, in 1970s, there was a huge response to the applied nutrients, and one could get about 13 kg of yield advantage with the application of 1 kg of NPK fertilizers. But this response has been constantly declining, and now we are hardly able to get about 3 kg, 2.5 or 3 kg of yield advantage by application of 1 kg of NPK fertilizer. So why this thing has happened? You are aware that during Green Revolution, the main emphasis was on the increasing food grain production with the application of NPK fertilizers. Since the varieties were highly responsive, they along with NPK fertilizers, they uptook this your micronutrients in large quantities. As a result of this, the deficiency of micronutrient emerged, and you know that micronutrients, they are required in a small amount of quantities, but if it is not available to the plant, then it cannot produce to its maximum potential. So because of the emerging micronutrient deficiencies, we could not get the proper response. Moreover, because of the declining soil health conditions, because of the high application of fertilizers and that too in not proper proportion. The ideal ratio for the fertilizer application is normally 4:2:1 for NPK, that is 4 part of nitrogen, 2 part of phosphorus and 1 part of potassium. This is the ideal ratio, but the farmers have been using the nutrients in an imbalanced way. They applied more amount of nitrogen and the least amount of potassium. This nutritional imbalances also has caused the deterioration in the yield. Moreover, the soil physical, chemical and biological properties has also been disturbed because of this improper and imbalanced use of fertilizers. Moreover, there is a constant increase in the emerging of micronutrient deficiencies. Initially, we could find only zinc deficient, but now we are having the boron deficiency, iron deficiency and manganese deficiency. They are also coming up. So this has caused a reduction in the crop yields. Moreover, there has been the deterioration in the soil physical properties. We know that in the rice wheat cropping system, which is the main cropping system of this region in the whole Indo-Gangetic plain, rice wheat cropping system is the most prominent cropping system, and there is a rapid decline in this yield of this rice wheat cropping system throughout the Indo-Gangetic plain. So we have to look into this matter, and we have to integrate all the source of nutrients to the all the sources of nutrients for proper nutrient supply to the plant, because only depending upon the chemical fertilizers it is not good. In the long run, it has caused different types of problems. Soil salinity is one of the major problem, and other problems are also emerging. So we should focus on the combined application of different sources of nutrient and reduce our dependency on the chemical fertilizers alone. So there are certain terms which are related with this. They seem to be same, but they have some different meanings. For example, we have one term that is your integrated plant nutrient system, IPNS. It refers to the supply of nutrient to the plant from various sources. These sources consist of nutrient reserves in soil, organic sources of nutrient, FYM, compost, green manures, crop residue and organic fertilizers. So integrated plant nutrition system. Second is your integrated plant nutrient supply system, IPNSS. IPNSS mainly concerns the maintenance or adjustment of the soil fertility and plant nutrients to an optimum level for sustaining the desired crop productivity through optimization of benefits from all possible sources of plant nutrient in an integrated manner. Third one is your integrated nutrient management, INM. Is the technical and managerial component of achieving IPNS, which I had already told. It is your integrated plant nutrient system under farm conditions. As such, it considers all the factors of soil and crop management, including management of all other inputs such as water, agrochemicals, etc. besides nutrient. Thus, in nutshell, The fundamental concept of INM system is the continuous improvement of soil fertility for sustained productivity on long-term basis through judicious and efficient use of inorganic fertilizers and various organic sources with the help which helps in the improvement of physical, chemical and biological properties of soil and consequently their optimum nutrient supply to different crops and cropping systems in a specific agroecological situations. This is your main concept of INM, that is the continuous improvement of soil fertility. Means it is not that we are only exploiting our soil and it gets the soil because grain is harvested, you are continuously removing the nutrients from the soil, and if the soil is not replenished with the nutrient, it will be getting poorer and poorer, and the deficiencies, if your crop becomes deficient, then the human becomes deficient, because we are now hearing of the zinc deficient in humans, iron deficiency. So once the crop become poor, humans, animals who depend upon the nutrient need on the plant, who depend upon nutrient needs on plants, they are also deprived of these nutrients. So maintaining a healthy soil with the integration of the different nutrient sources would make the crop healthy, and simultaneously the humans and animals will also become healthy. So what are the principles underlining INM? There are 6 basic principles, and this has been quoted by Melu 1996. He has highlighted the 6 principles underlining the INM. First one is nutrient removed by crop must be returned to the soil. So we must know how much amount of nutrient is removed for by a particular crop, and these data are available, and we must take a note of that and supply nutrient according to the need of the crop. Means according to the need or what amount of nutrient the crop has removed, that must be supplied, so that there is always a balance. There should always be a positive balance in the soil. Soil physical conditions should be maintained and upgraded. This is another important principle underlining INM. Soil physical conditions should be maintained and upgraded. So mostly we are concerned with the soil chemical properties. We apply the nutrient and we think that our work is done, but this is not the case. Soil physical conditions are also important for your crop production, and commonly the farmers they generally ignore the soil physical conditions, and that is not good. We see that if a soil has good physical conditions, so what do you mean by the physical conditions? Physical conditions means some of the commonly observed properties of a healthy soil are that it should be have low bulk density, it should have aggregates, it should have a larger amount of aggregates. So bulk density, if bulk density is low, if a soil is healthy, then relatively the bulk density is low. Bulk density means if your soil is having less density, that means the root can easily proliferate. It will easily proliferate in the soil. If the soil is having high bulk density, means it is more compact, then in that case the soil, the roots cannot respire and they face difficulty in proliferating in the soil. Similarly, your aggregation, soil aggregation is also very important, is one of the important soil physical properties. If your soil is aggregated, you can just imagine a soil aggregation in you can just imagine aggregation like a building. If building is made up of your sand, silt and cement, so if you orient those particles in a proper shape, it comes out to be a room, and there you can have window, doors, so that air can come in and go out. But if they are haphazardly arranged, sand, silt, clay, they are the primary particles of the soil, and if they are not arranged in the proper fashion, then the plants will face difficulty in taking the nutrient from the soil. The water and the aeration will not be proper. So maintaining a soil physical conditions is very good. Third one is the organic carbon levels of the soil should be maintained and enhanced. Organic carbon means this is the main food for the main source of food for the microorganisms. You know that it is the microorganisms whose continuous action, they work throughout the day and night, and they do the transformations, solubilization of the nutrients. So a healthy soil is one which contains large amount of organic carbon, because organic carbon is the food, and the more the food, more lively the system be, and more stable the system is. Organic carbon should be maintained, but maintaining organic carbon content in the soil is not an easy task. It requires continuous replenishment from the external sources in the form of residue retention or application of FYM, vermicompost. These are all required for maintaining the organic carbon levels. And moreover, in the tropical or the subtropical regions like ours, we cannot increase the organic carbon level beyond a certain level, because of the high temperature the microbial activity increases. Fourth one, that I was talking about the principles of INM. Fourth one is to build up of abiotic stress should be minimum. Fifth, the degradation of the land occurring due to soil erosion must be controlled. And sixth one, that the soil quality with respect to soil acidity, salinity, sodicity or toxic element build-up must be minimized. So these are the 6 principles underlining the INM. These principles emerge when one compares a natural ecosystem with an agricultural ecosystem. An agricultural ecosystem differs from a natural one in that plant nutrients are constantly being removed and exported, and in that source of plant nutrients outside the cropped area may be used to increase the crop production. What happens in the forest system? Whatever the plants take, the litter fall, there is no removal of the nutrients from the soil. It is a self-sustaining system. But in our agricultural ecosystem, what we do, we harvest the grain for food and straw for fodder for the cattle. So there is a removal of the nutrients, major nutrients, micronutrients from the soil, and if we do not replenish it, the soil becomes poor, and ultimately it causes the crop to become deficient. We become humans, animals, they all become deficient in that particular nutrient. So what are the advantages of INM? INM is the key to enhance the soil productivity and sustainability. The main advantage of INM system includes maintenance of soil fertility status. The maintenance of soil health is the prime importance, and if one follows the INM practice, then the soil fertility and soil health can be maintained. Increase the organic matter content by using you know that organic carbon, it is one of the most important property soil chemical properties which govern the nutrient transformation and nutrient availability. uh, so increasing organic matter content by using all available organic sources which enhance the physical, chemical and biological properties of the soil. Third one is to enrich soil microflora and microfauna. Fourth one is to make efficient use of resource recycling and nutrient movement within the farm. Fifth one is to maintain positive nutrient balance in the soil and to develop eco-friendly sustainable agriculture. Sixth one is to meet the social and economic aspirations of the farmer by lowering the cost of input and enhancing productivity as well as profitability. So as I have already pointed out that the soil health is deteriorating because of the improper and injudicious use of the chemical fertilizers. So we have to be more cautious while using these chemical fertilizers, and we should try to integrate the different nutrient sources, organic sources, biofertilizers, all can be used for maintaining a healthy soil ecosystem. So the different components of INM, they are we can say that we can include in INM system, we can include chemical fertilizers, biofertilizers, and crop residues, compost, green manures, and all locally available organic sources. More emphasis is on organic sources. So INM system, we can include chemical fertilizers, no problem. We have the vermicompost, green manure, compost, crop residue, leguminous crops, and biofertilizer. These are all can be used to in INM. So they contain bulky organic manures. What are the examples of bulky organic manure? They are farm compost, town compost, night soil, sewage and sludge, poultry manure. These are the examples of your bulky organic manure, because bulky means they are more voluminous. So they are called as bulky organic manures, and they contain appreciable amount of nutrients. Suppose poultry manure, it contains a high amount of nitrogen content in poultry manure may go up to 3%. Similarly, the phosphorus content is 2.63%, and potash content, that is 1.4%. We have the concentrated organic manure, means more nutrient on the unit volume. They are called concentrated organic manures. We have the wastage from the oil extraction, from mustard oil cake, ground oil cake, cotton oil, fish manure, neem cake, linseed cake, blood meal, bone meal. They all come under concentrated organic manures. like for example mustard oil cake. Mustard oil cake, it contains 5.21% of nitrogen, 1.84% of P2O5, and 1.19% K2O. We see that they contain appreciable quantities of the nutrient blood meal, means the blood which from the slaughterhouses, they are dried, and they contain very high quantity of nitrogen. They contain up to 10 to 12% of the nitrogen. So there are a number of bulky organic sources as well as concentrated organic manure. They are available, and one should try to use those manures in to supply nutrient to the crops. Similarly, we can use the green manuring crops. Green manuring crops, now we are the Kharif season is going to start, and we will be transplanting the paddy. So before paddy cultivation, we can use this dhaicha. Dhaicha, it is a leguminous crop, and it can be grown for a month, 30 days, and within a month the dhaicha crop, they may be killed by the use of 2,4-D chemical, and that is called brown manuring. If you kill those leguminous crop in situ within the field itself by the application of chemical, that is called as brown manuring. So dhaicha, it contains about 5 to 7%. 1 ton of fresh weight of dhaicha, it contains 5 to 7% of nitrogen. No, sorry, 1 ton of fresh weight of dhaicha will contain 5 to 7 kg of nitrogen, 1 to 1.5 kg of P2O5, and 7 to 8 kg of K2O. So we have the green manuring crops like sunham, dhaicha, cowpea, green gram. We should make a practice to grow this crop before the main crop. We should include these crops before the main crops, and we should use these crops as a green manure crops. Means after the harvest, one picking, suppose moong can be also used as a green manure. After picking, they can be incorporated within the soil, and even if no picking is done, then also it can be incorporated just before the main crop, so that the nutrient, the CN ratio of those crops, they are narrow, and they easily decompose in the soil and supply the nutrients to the succeeding crops. Similarly, we can use the vermicompost. Vermicompost also contains a appreciable amount of nutrient. It contains about 1.5 to 2.5% of the nitrogen. Phosphorus content is 0.9 to 1.7%, potash 1.5 to 2.4%, calcium 0.5 to 1%, magnesium 0.2 to 0.3%, sulfur 0.4 to 0.5%. So we see vermicompost, you know that they are the compost made with the help of earthworms. We use the mixture of cow dung and the easily degradable organic sources. It may be mixed in 50-50 ratio, and with the use of earthworms, efficient earthworm species, these organic residues, they are converted into compost, and this compost can be used in the field. Moreover, we can incorporate the rock phosphate also, so within during the vermicomposting process. So it will contain appreciable quantity. The phosphorus content can be increased. Similarly, we have another source that are the biofertilizers. So biofertilizers, they are the living organism. As I had already told that the transformations, solubilization of the nutrients, they all are microbially controlled. Means microorganisms, do the whole they do the they they are indulge in these activities, and if the microbial population, there is appreciable microbial population, these transformations are fast, and they help in the making the nutrients available to the crops. So biofertilizers are carrier based preparations. You might have seen the biofertilizer. They are the living organisms. It may be in liquid culture, or it may be in carrier based, means charcoal, coal based preparations are there, and they contain the active strains of the microorganism. So there are different types of biofertilizers available for different types of nutrient. Some biofertilizers, some biofertilizers, suppose symbiotic nitrogen fixing biofertilizers. So as the name suggests, symbiotic nitrogen fixers, they fix the atmospheric nitrogen by the leguminous plant with the help of the root nodule bacteria such as Rhizobium and Azolla. Rhizobium and Azolla, they live in close association with the leguminous plant, and it is a symbiotic relationship. These bacteria, they get the nutrient from the plant, and the bacteria in turn supplies the nitrogen to the plant. So both are benefited by this process. So that is your symbiotic nitrogen fixers. Similarly, we have the asymbiotic nitrogen fixing bacteria like Azotobacter, blue-green algae, Clostridium. These all fix nitrogen without living in symbiotic relationship with the crop plants. They can do their own, and it has been found out that with the use of Azotobacter, the yield in rice increased from 1 to 20%, and in wheat from 10 to 30%. Moreover, by the use of this biofertilizer, means in one study, by using Azotobacter, by using Azotobacter, inorganic fertilizer requirement was reduced to the tune of 25 to even 50% of the 50% of the fertilizer requirement by the crop can be reduced by the use of Azotobacter. It has been found in some of the studies that you can save about 25 to 50% of the chemical fertilizers by using this Azotobacter. Similarly, there are some nitrogen fixing biofertilizers. They live in associative nitrogen biofixers. This refers to the loose association, not like symbiotic, but some sort of association is there. Like loose association between the roots of non-leguminous plant like grass, maize, sorghum, wheat, barley, pearl millet, etc., and nitrogen fixing bacteria like Azospirillum. So that is your associative nitrogen fixing biofertilizers. Azolla, Azolla is an aquatic fern which has a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen fixing bacteria, and on an average decomposed azolla contains nitrogen 4 to 6%, phosphorus in terms of P 0.5 to 0.9%, potassium 2 to 6%, calcium 0.4 to 1%, magnesium 0.5%, and similarly other iron and manganese content also present. So now we have the phosphorus solubilizing microorganism. Phosphorus is one of the major nutrients, and its solubility is limiting in both the acidic and alkaline conditions. In acidic conditions, the applied phosphorus, it gets fixed in the iron and aluminum phosphate, and in the alkaline conditions it fixed at the calcium phosphate. So if you apply the fertilizer, it gets precipitated, and once precipitated, it is not available to the plant unless some microorganism solubilizes it and converts it into the ionic form to be used by the plant. Because of these fixations, the use efficiency of phosphorus is very low. Only 20 to 25% of the applied fertilizer is phosphatic fertilizers is used by the plant. Rest 80 to 75 to 80% is rendered unavailable to the plant because of its precipitation. So we have different types of microorganisms which helps in the solubilization of the fertilizers. One is your phosphate solubilizing fungi. We have the fungi, we have Aspergillus species, Trichoderma species, Penicillium species. They help in the solubilization of the fertilizer. The insoluble precipitated form is solubilized and made available to the plants. Similarly, there are certain groups of bacteria like Pseudomonas species and Bacillus species. They help in the solubilizing of the bacteria. Similarly, there are mobilizers also, VAM, vesicular avascular mycorrhiza. They increase the surface area of the roots and help in the mobilizing of the phosphorus. Since phosphorus its mobility is very less, so in the soil, so this VAM, they act, they increase the surface area of the roots and help in mobilizing of phosphorus to the crops. And it in one of the studies it has been found out that VAM can save the phosphatic fertilizer to the tune of 25 to 30%. Now the question comes, how the biofertilizers are to be applied to the crops. One way is by the seed treatment. 200 gram of nitrogenous biofertilizer and 200 gram of phosphotica, that is a phosphate solubilizing bacteria, culture of phosphate solubilizing bacteria, are suspended in 300 to 400 ml of water and mixed thoroughly. 10 kg seeds are treated with this paste and dried in shade. The treated seeds have to be sown as soon as possible. This is one way of seed treatment. Second one, by seedling root dip. For rice crop, a bed is made in the field and filled with water. Recommended biofertilizers are mixed in this water and the roots of the seedlings are dipped for 8 to 10 hours we can make a slurry of this microorganism and dip the root for 8 to 10 hours. Similarly, soil treatment can also be done. 4 kg of the recommended biofertilizer are mixed in 200 kg of compost and kept overnight. This mixture is incorporated in the soil at the time of sowing or planting. In case of sugarcane, set treatments can be done. Set treatment suspended and mixed thoroughly 5 kg of biofertilizer for 1 acre in 100 liters of water. Treat can set by dipping in the suspension before planting. Means we have to use 5 kg of biofertilizer in 100 liter of water, and this will be sufficient for 1 acre. Similarly, soil treatment can also be done for sugarcane. 5 kg of biofertilizer per acre in 10 liter of water and mixed throughoutly with 80 to 100 kg of FYM. The mixed biofertilizer in FYM is sprinkled over cane sets in row of planting. After planting, the rows should be immediately covered. So, whether we have sufficient amount of organic sources available as a nutrient to meet the demand. So in one study, Tandon 1997, he made a study and he projected the total availability of the organic sources by the year 2025, and he based on his study he concluded that the nutrient content, I am just making the statement, the nutrient content of various organic sources have the total nutrient potential of 14.85 million tons, which was estimated in 2000, which would become around 16.34 and 32.41 million tons by the nutrient he estimated that the total nutrient potential from the organic sources is 14.85 million tons, and it would grow to 32.41 million tons by 2025. Out of these organic sources, the tappable potential of nutrient NPK from human excreta, livestock dung, crop residue has been worked out to the order of 5.05 million tons in 2000, and it comes out to be 6.24 and 7.75 million tons by 2025. So he concluded that there is a considerable amount of organic sources which can be tapped, which are the potential sources for nutrient, and they can be used in integrated nutrient management to supply nutrients to the crop. Moreover, nowadays we are seeing the residue burning. It is harmful not only for the from the nutrient point of view, we are burning it, but also from the environment point of view, it is causing the environmental pollution, global warming. So we should not waste that precious resources. It should be either retained in the soil, we can retain it, or we can incorporate in the soil to improve the organic carbon content, and which in turn will make the nutrients available to the soil by the action of the microorganisms. So with this I come to the end of my topic. If any difficulty or if more resources are required, then you may contact on my mobile number 9431807104, or you can email me at santosraupusa@gmail.com. Hope you enjoyed listening me, and I thank the organizer for giving an opportunity to deliver this talk. Once again, thanks a lot to all.